Bruce,
Yes.
we have 4 people. For some reason showing 5, but Janet's in, so I don't know why. We have 4 people over in our attendees. Cheryl Grosso, Lindsay Laban, Steve Clark, and Trish Adams.
Okay.
Do you want to move them over as panelists?
Sure, especially Steve. He's our presenter, or Jim. Steve, I'm sorry. Steve Clark is our presenter, one of our presenters.
Okay. Steve,
Mute.
what were you gonna say, Janet?
I think I'm unmuted now. Am I
You're unmuted.
unmuted? Can I be heard now? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, yes, Steve Clark, I invited him. I gave him the so if I'm not being heard well, I'll switch to my phone.
Yeah, you're being heard, but you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to try my phone.
Okay. Yeah, if you're going to do that, just make sure you mute.
I have to turn this off.
Just make sure you mute yourself on here and turn down your volume because it'll give you feedback.
Oh, okay. Oh. I was going to leave my computer and just go to my phone.
Oh, well, you could do that as well.
Okay.
Everybody in good health and surviving mentally?
Yes, well,
One second. Hold on.
Hanging in there.
That's good. That's good.
Hey, Shelia, we saw you at the tree tenders meeting the other night, last week, I think it was.
Yes, and actually, the PHS is doing a 6-week. This is the advanced tree tendings class that will be starting this week if anyone's interested. So it's $60 and it's online at PHS, but it's the advanced tree tenders class. So most of you are already tree tenders. It just takes you up a notch.
Cool. Yeah, Mindy sent us that information as well.
Oh, good.
Everybody ready to go with the official start of the meeting? Here we go. First, there's a call to order. Secondly, I'm going to take roll call for the folks that I know are for the whole group, actually. Bruce Killen, I'm here. Harry Bryant. Looks, I can see Harry.
Here.
Okay. I have Joe Pinto.
Here.
Cindy Mehallow.
Here.
Okay. Janet Krevenas, are you here again? I'll loop back to her. Jason DeCecco.
Here.
Okay. Shelia O'Sullivan Feeney
Present.
and Mike Russo. No, Mike Russo. And Steve Neese, we know, is running the Zoom session. Do we have Leonard Altieri here, supervisor?
I'm here, Bruce.
Okay, thanks. And Linda McIsaac will be presenting. She's here. I can see her. I know she's here.
Hear me?
And then finally, Steve Clark will be presenting as well. You okay, Steve? Can you hear us? Great.
Ooh.
We're going to have a moment of silence. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our September meeting?
So,
Make a motion. So moved.
Yeah, and do I have approval of the agenda this evening?
Wait, I'm sorry. I had maybe two minor corrections on the agenda.
Okay, on the
I
agenda.
mean, the minutes,
Uh-huh.
under the beginning where it had present and absent, you had supervisor absent, but you didn't have any name there. I think you probably meant to put Russo there.
Okay,
And then under old business, the Shade Tree Commission, and this is very minor because I thought they were excellent minutes. The word "for" is repeated twice in the third line from the bottom.
okay.
But I thought the minutes were excellent.
You don't miss much, Cindy.
Oh, it's the proofreader in me.
In terms of the actual agenda, the content of tonight, Whole Foods at about 7:30 or 4:30 had to back out. It turns out they're a big company, and his presentation had to be approved by their public relations people. So they want to come in probably next month or the month of December after this approval, after the public relations people. So what I've done is I've swapped Linda McIsaac in for this time slot to discuss the idea of a Newtown Square farmers market. Linda, are you here and ready to talk?
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Little too low,
Too low? Can you hear me now?
still on the low side.
Hmm. That's as loud as I can make it, so,
I can hear her fine.
yeah.
I'll
Okay.
turn my volume up. Maybe that's
Yeah.
will make a difference.
So thanks everybody for giving me a few minutes to talk about the farmers market idea for 2021. I've spoken to quite a few of you already, and I've met with the Parks and Rec Board or committee, as well as Newtown Square and Bloom. And so for those of you who don't know, I'm part of Gather in the Circle, which is a placemaking committee for Newtown Square. And we're focusing on the St. Albans Circle area, working to activate and test ideas in the short term for long-term permanent changes. And we want to get the community involved and to just make sure that we bring community together in this area and have them a part of the changes that may come to that area. And so one of our ideas for 2021 is to bring a farmer's market to the St. Albans Church parking lot, and then also maybe take a portion of Chapel Road. And we'd like to start the farmer's market in May and have it run once a week through the growing season, probably ended at about September, October. And what I'm coming to the EAC for is hoping that, apologize for my dog, that the EAC would be willing to partner with our committee, the Parks and Rec Committee, Newtown Square and Bloom, to create sort of a joint venture. One second.
That dog is on YouTube.
My dogs wanted to chime in. They had an opinion. They like it. So they were making a big fuss. So anyway, we're hoping that we can all partner as committees together to form a good, strong farmers market for the township and have some volunteers from each committee, and also have all the committees work to get the word out so that it is a successful farmers market. And the benefit that it would also bring to each committee, including the EAC, is not only bringing local organic produce and the idea of buying local, which we're hoping will also go to the local businesses. And if there are local businesses that are wanting to share and participate, it gives them another opportunity to connect with the community in a different way. But also what it'll bring to the EAC and the other committees is a point of outreach at each farmer's market to, spread the word of whatever you're doing. Whatever, teaching about rain gardens, teaching about, if it's parks and rec, yoga in the park. So the point is, we're hoping that at each farmer's market, each week at the farmer's market, we'll have one tent dedicated to the township committee, and we'll rotate, outreach for each committee and the involvement that they're doing. And so that way we can connect to the community in a different way. But the benefit it all is also us all working together to sort of make and bring a farmer's market to St. Albans Circle successfully. So what I wanted to do is just get your feedback and to see if the EAC would be interested in partnering with Gather in the Circle and the Parks and Rec and Newtown Square and Bloom to bring a farmer's market in 2021.
Well, let me start by saying that Linda has talked to me about this, and also we already talked about moving the pop-up garden once it has been has its 10-day run at the administration building, that the plants would be moved over to the St. Albans area. So we could certainly continue on with the native plant information, and then get our community involved with putting in native plant pop-up gardens of their own, or a pop-up meadow. That's another term I've heard, pocket meadow. So I think it's a great idea.
Linda, I need some clarification.
Sure.
I guess there's two parts of the farmer's market. One is the kind of the administration that happens behind the scenes, and the other is manning the market when it's open. Are you looking out for us to get involved in both, or just manning the market?
I'd say, it's open to negotiation, and we can just create the best partnership that will work for everyone. We do have, I did forget to say that, so the person that would be leading the farmers market committee her name is Carol Butler, and she is with the Pennsylvania Resources Council, and she's the lady who ran the prior farmers market that was at Mostardi's. And she has the know-how. She knows how to market, where to find your vendors, the process that that we'll need to go through to make sure that it's successful. So I feel really confident that we have somebody already on board who's done this before, so we don't have to start from scratch. So to speak to your question, Bruce, I think it could be both, or it would be both. It's as much as you're willing to give to be involved. And I think what we're looking to do is form a subcommittee that would be farmers market subcommittee under Gather the Circle, but that each township committee that's involved, would be willing to help with the administration, and then also help with the actual physical setup, marketing, whoever can get involved. So, I mean, it wouldn't be everybody, but it's who's willing, or if you know somebody who would be a good fit, that would be the part that they would play. But then it also would be your audience that you already have. You would amplify the farmers market And so that would help bring more people to the farmer's market as well. So, I mean, I think that could be part of what we're looking for as well.
Mhm. Well, I know personally, I'd commit a couple it's Saturday morning is your thought?
I think that's what we're leaning towards, where that looks like the most popular choice so far. We've already put a survey out. I have to broadcast it a little more, but it looks like Saturday morning is the most popular time right now.
Well, I'll give up some time on Saturday mornings. Does anybody else have an interest in?
I have a question or two.
Sure.
Linda, I'm happy you have a consultant involved. I guess I think it's a wonderful idea, but I'm aware of the fact that there's a very good one in Westchester. The Westchester Growers Market's excellent. I was there last weekend, and it's very successful. If we could be as successful as they are, we would be happy. There's one in Phoenixville. There's one in Ardmore, I think, and maybe even one in Bryn Mawr. And of course, there's a big one in Wayne. And I guess I'm just a little nagged about whether one, you can get there more or enough first-line vendors to populate the thing, and two, whether we would generate the traffic that they would require.
Yeah, no, I think those are good points, and Harry, and I think that's where we'll have to do more work to find out if we can get the vendors to commit for the days that we want them to commit to make it successful. And if there is enough demand, I mean, I think the last farmers market at Mostardi's, it was fairly successful and it was popular with the community. And so, you know, the downside was the location was difficult and the day that it was held was also difficult. So it didn't give the community, you know, enough of the community access to that farmer's market. So I think moving the location and the date could help. And I also think, yeah, I mean, that's where having Carol on board, who's run a farmer's market before, she can help guide us to help determine whether it will, you know, how many months it's going to have to run to be successful, what vendors are available. I also think that's where opening it up to the local businesses could be unique, where we'll also look for other farmers, other local crafts people who maybe are not exactly in Newtown Square, but I really would like to offer Newtown Square businesses the opportunity as well, if they're the right fit. You know, maybe there are some Newtown Square business owners or entrepreneurs who can't afford to have a brick and mortar store, but they have an idea, or they have a small farm, or they have something. So I think this could also give them the opportunity to sell to their community. So I just think that's also an opportunity that we should at least give it a try.
The other question I had is, and it's a boring one, but Westchester has a very good parking lot next to the parking lot that they use for the market itself. Phoenixville is right next to the municipal lot, so there's decent parking in both of those cases. If we're going to use the parking lot for the market, are we clear there's sufficient reasonably proximate parking elsewhere if in fact the thing works?
Right. No, I think parking is always going to be an interesting challenge for right now. I do think where the market was in Mostardi's, we could have asked that same question: where are people going to park? And, you know, people just parked on the side of the road, and it was temporary. And I think that approach would work for areas around the circle. I think for temporary parking, people would pull up, they could park on the side, they could use some of the lots that aren't really used on a Saturday, because a lot of those businesses aren't Saturday, Sunday, weekend businesses. So there is excess parking as it is. And the other idea long-term, just so you know, is that people won't be driving all the time, and that it will actually encourage some of the community that can walk or to get there from the areas right behind, that they can actually just walk to the market and then they can walk home. And so it's starting to encourage looking at that space differently. So I think there's a community right behind the market that has access through sidewalks, through just walking. But I also think that, parking would be able to be accommodated, because a lot of the businesses that are actually in the circle right now are Monday through Friday businesses.
Hi, Linda. I think this is a great idea that you're trying this, and it would be nice to have a thriving market here. I do have the same concerns that Harry has about the competition from the other markets in the area and being able to attract enough quality vendors and, be able to give them enough volume that it makes it worth their while. And I was just on the, but I'm sure, that's something that Carol Butler can advise you on. Just one thought about the farmer's market that was at Mastardi's. I went there a couple times and did not end up frequenting it more often. I think I got the impression there, or it could have been elsewhere, that the produce was not necessarily grown by the people who were selling it. And I can't remember if it was that or a different farmer's market, but that I know is a turnoff to me, because I expect if I go to a farmer's market that the person, it's a farmer or his representative selling it. It's not produce that was bought somewhere else and is being sold. Just a thought to put out there.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. So we wouldn't want somebody like that. So we'll be more discriminatory if we can. I mean, discerning is the better word.
Yeah. The only thing I just wanted to add is that if you need help in terms of anything on from the Board of Supervisors, I'd be more than willing to help out with this, because I think it is a good community asset. I think that what Harry and Cindy both said are two legitimate concerns, but if there's something I know about you, Linda, I think you'll overcome it. So if I can help out, please utilize me.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Linda, I already heard your great speech at Parks and Rec Committee the other day, so I'm definitely, will help in any way I can.
Thanks, Sheila.
I feel the same way. It's a great idea. I'm ready to throw some of my time at it when things are worked out, Linda.
Great. Thank you, Bruce.
Further discussion on this item, or should we bring it to closure?
Actually, yeah, I could chime in real quick. I think that I know the last Historical Society meeting, farmers markets were brought up, and I think it was just kind of a quick, like, hey, that would be a good idea. That'd be cool. People will be interested. But the idea is that most farmers markets are established and the vendors are committed. So it might be kind of difficult to get into. So I think there are people on the Historic Society, and we have the meeting tomorrow night, that would be interested in as well.
Okay, that's great to know. I actually did speak to Kathy.
Okay, yeah.
Two Kathys that are on the Historical Society with Cindy. And I did talk to them about this idea, and they did seem interested, because I thought it also would be a good connection to Newtown Square's past, and able to offer the Historical Society as well that opportunity to outreach during a farmer's market. So yeah, good to know. So thank you. So I don't want to take anybody else's time. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and yeah, I look forward to working with you.
Thanks a lot, Linda.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, Steve, Steve Clark, are you in a position to start your presentation now, or should we do some other items?
Whatever works best for you guys.
Okay.
I'm fine.
If
To wait or delay, it doesn't matter.
you don't mind, starting now would work out best for us.
Sure. How much, what do you think for time-wise? I thought it was 20 minutes.
Something like that, and if it goes over, fine. If you're short, that's fine as well.
Okay, great. So I think you give me permission to share.
Yeah, let me stop sharing so that you can.
As we're switching here, it occurred to me that it might be very interesting for us to go join a couple of other EACs in the area to see how their meetings run and what ideas, how we could work together across community.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is an EAC summit coming up, and I don't have the details now. I can set that up, but there's a virtual summit mid-month in October. I'll send the details out.
All right. I think we've been to one of, or a couple of those. Did Peter run them?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll get started. Thank you guys for the invitation, and Janet especially for facilitating this. I'll try to go about 20 minutes with 10 minutes of question and answer, but please just stop, or I'll try to check the text boxes if there are questions. So I'm going to give a presentation on the Ready for 100 initiative in this area. I'm going to focus mostly on what it is. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on climate change and the need for action and stuff. I'm going to get more into the hows as opposed to the whys of what this is about. So this is an outline, just a little bit of background, and then what is Ready for 100, what's going on nationally and locally, what is a clean energy resolution that you may or may not choose to bring to your Board of Commissioners that would be compliant with the Ready for 100 initiative, and then tools and resources about the transition. So that's a high-level overview. Let me see if I can get rid of these videos here. Okay, great. As we all know, carbon in the atmosphere is increasing. Here's just a slide showing the trend over the last 140 years. We've passed 400 parts per million over the last few years, and we're approaching the tipping point that scientists think are where we'll have irreversible runaway climate change is 1.5 degrees C. So we're getting there pretty quickly, especially over the last, you can see this accumulation over the last 40 years or so. The international community has issued this warning for 1.5 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels, as this would have this is kind of the safe band that we live in. I'm sure most people know about this. This report, this was done 2 years ago about this time. And about a year before that, there was the, if you guys remember, the Paris Accord, where the international community pledged, including the United States, to sharply reduce emission of carbon to stay within the safe zone for the planet. But it would require rapid action and commitments from the national level down to the individual level to do this. And as we know, in 2017, the United States federal government pulled out of the Paris Accords. So the Ready for 100 initiative is really, it's really local governments standing up and saying, we are still committed to those goals, and we are committed to use our leadership to get to where we need to be. This is just two small bullets that I don't know how many people know, but I found both of these pretty surprising. Just want to highlight. There was a paper 5 years ago in Nature, which is the premier, scientific journal in the world, that showed we can only burn 20% or less of the world's known remaining fossil fuels and keep within that safe zone for the planet. So while we have vast reserves from certainly in Pennsylvania from fracking, and now from the Arctic, and all these other places that are being opened up, we can only actually use a certain amount and to stay in this safe. Probably now it's less than 20% because the reservoirs have increased. The second thing, this was very interesting, post-COVID, due to the economic downturn, people have found all over the world the air quality has dramatically improved. And one of the things people are finding is the burden from burning fossil fuel on worldwide health, particularly respiratory health, is staggering. And the if you look at these pictures, this is in Italy. There's tons of pictures all over the world just like this, where if people stop burning fossil fuels, we have cleaner air. The effect on human health and human mortality from a whole wide variety of respiratory diseases is it's in the millions of lives that are lost every year, and staggering amounts of health dollars. And many of these are in marginalized communities, the people that have to live near highways or refineries or factories. And so I thought that was, so now I'm going to get into what is Ready for 100. So this is an initiative. It's a part of the Sierra Club. It's a nonprofit organization that is not allowed to lobby political organizations. The whole purpose of Ready for 100, which is short for to transition for 100% renewable energy, is to get these resolutions started and to get people organized and talking and connected to make plans to transition their communities to renewable energy. So that's what that is. The specific ask, which I think I would be thrilled if you guys are considering this, or your commissioners would be, is to make a resolution for to do these following things. And you don't have to do all of these things, but this is what the Ready for 100 initiative would be, are kind of templates, and many of your neighboring communities have done this. This is the main part of this. This is really the Paris Accords. Commit to 100% renewable electricity by 2035 and heat and transportation by 2050. And while we all know that any municipal government can't compel the people in the houses and all the businesses where they buy the energy, they certainly can, as leaders in the community, transition themselves and also promote this, the need to do this, to promote solar energy, to make codes simpler for people installing solar to do. There's a wide variety of things that municipalities and EACs can do as leaders. So none of this is, of course, is binding. I can't make my neighbor shovel their walk or do really do anything. But and so this is really that's what's a resolution, and it's not binding in that sense. I have this. This is more of a suggestion. A resolution should have some kind of timeline for drafting a transition plan. I'll get into that with a timeline. Haverford passed its resolution 2 years ago, I think, almost to the month, and there was the original proposal we had something by the following Earth Day. So it's a decent amount of time to start or get a draft of a transition plan, and I'll get into that. The Sierra Club is very sensitive to inclusion, particularly for people that have been left out of a lot of decision making, to have the process be inclusive. Further, I think we'd all like to have a call out, especially to the state of Pennsylvania, to do similar, to make similar resolutions. The Alternative Energy Portfolio Standard is really important because it really is the statewide rule of how much renewable energy is in our grid mix. And right now, the electricity coming out of your walls is about 0.5% renewable. So Pennsylvania is certainly not having nearly the amount of renewables that we need feeding our power system. The electricity is about 1/3 nuclear, 1/3 coal, and 1/3 natural gas. And finally, we pledge to work with other municipalities. I know Janet, I see her at the monthly Ready for 100 meetings. As you guys, we just talked about, there's an EAC summit. Climate is, and these resolutions are front and center at, across many EACs, most of them actually in this area. Finally, there is a link here. There's some kind of Zoom thing over it. But if you wanted to see, this is a draft resolution in Word that you can pull up and modify and do what you will if you guys are interested in taking that step. Any questions so far?
So this is Leonard Altieri. I'm driving right now, so I can't see the presentation, but what were the 5 points that I think you only mentioned 2 that you would want in the resolution?
The main thing for Ready for 100 that is to be compliant, which is really compliance with the Paris Accords, is 100% clean renewable electricity by 2035, and heat and transportation, which is everything else, by 2050. That is the main part of it. I think the other things are kind of common sense, lower barriers, but the real commitment is that. The other ones here that we suggest, I suggest should be included is, we are going to draft a transition plan, and maybe April next Earth Day is too aggressive. That's fine, but a date. It could be 6 months away. It could be a year away. But let's put a commitment on here. A transparent. The third one is transparent and inclusive process. So there should be some discussion at public forums of the energy plan and things like that. That's number 3. Number 4 would be a call on state of Pennsylvania to do the same. And then working with other municipalities to share information and so forth. So those are the 5 things, but really it's really the real resolution is those 2 milestones: electricity by 2035 and heat and transportation by 2050. I'm going to move on to the next slide. This slide changes rapidly. This is on the national, the picture is the National Ready for 100 homepage. You can see the states are in dark green that have made these commitments, and there's over 165 cities and cities, and then 8 states. So over 100 million people live in under local governments or state governments that have made these commitments. And you can see on the right your sister communities in the area that have done this. This is in the high 20s now, and it's growing quickly, even with COVID. So you can see who has already committed. There's one school district in here, Radnor Township School District, actually just made a commitment to do this. So this is not just municipalities, but ideally school districts would do similar. I put 3 bullets I found very interesting here in the side. The first one is one of the major parties that's running for president has made a very similar commitment in terms of the climate plan. It's actually a little more aggressive than Ready for 100. So it's carbon-free power by 2035. I think they're not rolling out nuclear, but it'd be carbon-free by 2035. But this is actually even a little stronger than the Ready for 100, carbon neutral by 2050. So that's everything. Not just heating and transportation sectors, it's, agriculture, everything. That's a very aggressive commitment. Michigan just made a commitment to be carbon neutral by 2050. And again, carbon neutrality commitment is even more far-reaching than just heating and transportation. And then what I found, and I think a lot of people are very excited with, of course, the devil's in the details, but China has pledged to reach carbon neutrality by 2060. And as we know, most of the manufacturing comes from China. And so and most products, so if these 2 manufacturing centers, Michigan and China, are making these kind of commitments, a lot of our products and everything, this is happening, and this will be happening pretty quick. So there's just some background on this. Any questions? Okay. 71% of Pennsylvanians support the goal of generating 100% renewable by 2030. And people think this is realistic. So what does this entail? The first step, of course, is make a commitment. It's no different than saying, I'm going to run a marathon, in 4 months, or I'm going to lose some weight. If people make a public commitment, there's a greater chance they'll follow through. And often it's unclear what the exact steps are when you make that commitment of how you get to that goal, especially if it's decades in the future, like these are. And there's a lot of debate on this, but I think this is the right way to go. There's a lot of technology that we're going to probably need, for instance, to get our heating off of natural gas, which is what most of us use. Will it be hydrogen? Will it be geothermal? There's a lot more. That's a harder goal. That second goalpost than converting our electricity grid to clean electricity. So the first step is setting a resolution, making a public resolution, and putting your name on that list of communities who have made that commitment, and having the leadership to do that. The second steps would be making a transition plan or a climate action plan. And then, of course, acting is a big part of all of this and stakeholder engagement. In terms of energy transition plans, there's a huge variety of how people are doing this. The Ready for 100 team is just wrapping up a energy planning session where there was about 16 municipalities who participated over the summer. I was one of the people assisting in this, and so it was someone from the township, like a facilities person, typically, and or someone from their EAC, together doing a lot of these steps as a team. And it was a multi-week session over the summer. We're not sure if it's going to be repeated or not, because it's just wrapping up. But I know there's a lot of interest for something like that. Other municipalities, I think it's Plymouth Meeting is using. There's Villanova students who are working to develop a plan with them as kind of a project. Some other municipalities like Westchester boroughs and Radnor have placed an RFQ and paid for a professional company to do it. And then finally, there's the DVRPC just completed a round of municipalities signing up for another initiative that is using, I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's ICLEI. It's a whole set of tools, and there's people that are coming in and they got a grant to do this. And Haverford is one of those. I think was it Upper Darby is one. And there's, I think, 3 or 4 other ones around in this area who have signed up for that. So there's a wide variety of ways to do this. Only some of them involve, RFQ and, the township, hiring a professional firm. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. And I think we're all at the point right now where we're getting enough, these are coming due, and enough people are doing this, certainly by, next summer or whenever, if you guys were interested, we would have a lot of plans out there. We'd have a lot of experience collectively on how people do this in a cost-effective manner, because it's a very similar process between municipalities of what they need to do to generate these plans. Any questions? Okay. So Philadelphia actually has an energy manager and with staff. It's just so they're big enough where they can actually draw up a plan like the one you see at the left that has all the parts of review from all the stakeholders and inventory of carbon, all those kind of things. But one key thing is, who would draft this up? Like I was saying, is the EAC, would the EAC be doing it? Most townships don't have the resources to devote someone to that. So I don't think this is happening within township governments, and that's fine. But like I was saying, the energy planning series that the Ready for 100 team completed over the summer, it was like kind of like workshops over, I don't know if it was like 5 weeks or so, and there was a different topic each week, a lot of data collected. So it was someone from the township attending, and typically someone from the EAC paired up to create these plans. Consultant that would cost money. Certainly collaborate with other munis. That's one of the purposes of the EAC summit next week, and the Ready for 100 initiative and all the meetings that we have. Typically, it should be done within 9 to 12 months. I think this is more realistic than I had Earth Day of 2021. That probably is not, maybe that's not realistic. That's a symbolic thing, but you know, certainly a year would be reasonable to say we're going to have a transition plan by that time. Interim milestones and priorities, and obviously with any plan, the near term ones are easier to define and cheaper and all that kind of good stuff. The for instance, you know, focusing on efficiency has the township converted everything, all lighting to LEDs. I just as a disclaimer, I'm on excuse me, I'm on the Haverford EAC and Ready for 100, but I'm also my company runs Pico's Smart Ideas energy efficiency program. So energy efficiency is really one of the first and most certainly cost effective and cash positive things you would do. I just checked our database, and over the last 5 years, we've issued $160,000 in incentive to Newtown Square businesses for energy efficiency over 41 projects, and that includes streetlights for the municipality. I have about $12,000 incentive for that. I don't know if that was the whole municipality or just a part of them, but certainly part of that would be yes, we're gonna define our highest emitting and highest energy uses facilities and focus on efficiency, which has the quickest payback anyway. Convert everything to LEDs and so forth. I'll get into that a little more. Another early step would be start thinking about procuring energy, renewably sourced energy. There's talk bubbling up about municipalities pooling their resources, or some, you know, products coming available on the CoStar's procurement site for renewably sourced electricity locally. That would be hopefully the same or lower price than what people would get for brown power. And the third thing would be that we all know would be switching the fleets of the townships to hybrids and electrics. Putting in some charging stations through the grants that are out there, making sure the solar codes are as simple as possible, and there's plenty of resources to do all this. So that's just some, again, the point of the plan is not to say how are we going to heat every house with renewable sources, but to define the steps you would take near term, certainly in greater clarity. So I don't want anybody to feel intimidated by you know, what would happen in 2047 in a plans like this, because they're all iterative too. They get updated. What I want to show here is something that if townships do make a, and I think this is informative too, for carbon emissions across a township. So you make a commitment, say, to lose weight, and you got to step on a scale. And so I do this just as a volunteer for free because I have access to the data. But I can, once people make a commitment, I'll do a carbon inventory. And so this gives a, it's like a starting place of what are the top emitters to focus on, and what could be done in each of them at a high level. And then township wide, what perspective is that? I'll just go through this really quickly because I think it's interesting. This is a, I've done about 12 of these so far. You can tell It's no longer anonymous. This is Plymouth. Sorry about that. This is, data is confidential. This is their data, but regardless. This is the 80-20 rule. You guys probably know that in most tasks, only a small amount of things are responsible for most of the good, or in this case, carbon emissions. And for Plymouth Township, I did this, it includes streetlights as well as the fleets. There's only a small number that are over, in this case, 92% of emissions. So they have a community center and municipal vehicles, the liquid fuels, and streetlights. And so there's no point really in focusing on this building here that, or these ones down here who really don't use much. You can get much bigger bang for your buck if you focus on the larger sources of carbon and actually larger savings and all that great stuff too. This is formatting is a little odd on this, but what we also have available that is really helpful and really illuminating is interval data. So businesses for the last decade, many 2 decades, and now houses in our PICO territory record electricity usage every 15 or 30 minutes. And so you can get a plot like this that shows exactly how energy is used for the last year, minute by minute. And this is a heat map. And if you're not colorblind, which I apologize if you are, red is high electricity usage. And this is a typical day. This is midnight to midnight. And this is about a year ago. And so you can see this building turns on at, I don't know what it is, 5 o'clock in the morning. And then this is the weather. This is where it's hot. You can see the air conditioning coming on. And so you can look at this and see there's tools that PICO has that you can say, oh, looks like we're leaving the lights on all night, or we don't have cooling setbacks running. And there's a lot of low cost things that you can do pretty quickly. And I'd be happy to work with you guys on any specific facilities or businesses. I know we have a couple big projects at SAP running right now, but this is a really powerful new tool. So we have all this kind of stuff to say, well, it looks like you could, again, better control your lights or so forth. Here's another one. Here's where we did a project. You can see the energy use drop. And by the way, if you guys do have any facilities that you want to get incentives, the program is closing in the middle of May next year. So any municipal buildings or other businesses, just please give me a call and I'll get someone out there to talk to you and hopefully get a project and some incentive rebates going. And then here's just looking at the data. What are the top emitters? So we can, again, looking at the scale, it's usually one major building, but fleets are the big, typically police vehicles and or refuse. So that's something to keep on your radar, for procurement. There's great hybrid police cars that are coming out now that I know Radnor is switching everyone over, and Haverford actually has just bought one. So they will save a huge amount because that's a huge expenditure. I don't want to go too much. I'm sorry for the font here, but this is tying it all together. The DVRPC has collecting data on the different sectors of energy use and carbon, and they break it down by transportation, commercial, and residential. This is fairly typical. Actually, this is not typical. I think this is because of the mall. This is very high commercial. 58% of the carbon is from commercial, but typically across the municipality, and I would be surprised if Newtown Square was that different. It's about 1/3 for each of these slices. So transportation, this is cars, fleets, everything, and commercial meters, and then electric meters. One thing that's interesting though, and this is a real challenge for any of these initiatives, is the municipality can lead the way and totally convert to solar and do all these great things, but it's only a tiny fraction of the total emissions. And this is pretty typical. In this case, it's Plymouth Township it's less than a percentage of the total emissions. So the real challenge is, and the much harder thing to do is how do we, how do we do this across the township? And that's a real outreach thing. And I don't think anybody has cracked that, but it's what we have to do. So that's like a 6-page little thing that, if you guys do pass, I'd be happy to just put this together, but it also gives it's great energy education for municipality to see where their energy dollars go and what the carbon emissions are, and some easy quick wins. That's all I have. I wanted to keep it hopefully simple as possible. Does that give a picture? Or Janet, I know you wanted more focus on what the resolution would be and what it would entail.
Right, how we move forward with it. And,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So there, like I said, there.
I think it's the presentation.
Okay. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think your presentation kind of gave us a roadway, hopefully one that's electric car roadway, to help us begin to think further about this.
Right.
Especially with you holding our hands.
Sure. No, I'm happy to do this as much as needed. Yeah, absolutely.
Since our neighbors have done this a lot, many of our neighbors have done this, I think it would behoove us to be moving in this direction as well.
Yeah, this is Cindy. If I can just chime in, and Steve, thank you for that presentation. And I would urge the EAC and the township to be supportive of this. This is the way of the future. And if we don't do this, we're being left behind. We're leaving money on the table. We're harming the health of our residents. As Steve pointed out, a lot of these initial steps are eventually revenue neutral. You save a lot of money by doing some of these things. And if we look around, I mean, New York State just announced last year one of the most ambitious climate plans in the world, where they are going to get 70% of their electricity from renewable sources by 2030. And by 2050, they want to get rid of all net greenhouse gas emissions, and all their electricity would come from carbon-free sources. So they are thinking of switching over their entire electric grid, their power grid, to fossil fuel, carbon-free. And in California, the governor just announced that they will not sell any more fossil fuel cars. I forget what year, not too far in the future. I know that every day you hear about another corporation that is looking to reduce its carbon footprint, not only of the energy they use, but the energy that's used back through its supply chain by its suppliers. So this is the way of the future. And I think it is wonderful, Steve, that we would have access to someone with your capabilities and expertise to help us.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to, however you guys need it. I do this as a volunteer. I also my day job that's all I do is energy stuff. And so I have access to all the data, you know, with permission from the township, like a signed authorization letter. I can get the data for you guys, you know, really fast, you know, whatever is needed. So I'd be totally happy to advise or assist however you think is appropriate.
I'd like to hear from Steve, as the one representative of the township still here, as to whether this is a goal worth pursuing. We have a two-party system, and this issue, unfortunately, although it should not be political, has become political. We have 5 people who are the board of members of the Board of Supervisors. They all come from a political party that denies the validity of what you have just said. And I think that I guess I need to hear from Steve whether this is something we could nonetheless hope to achieve, or whether we're just knocking our head against the wall, because I don't have a sense.
So Steve, I don't know if you meant, I don't know if you meant Steve Neese. I don't know if you meant Steve Neese.
Which
but
Steve?
Steve, if you want, if you want it, yeah. So Steve Neese, if you want, I can pick that up.
Well, I'm gonna defer to Leonard in just a second, but if I could, I would like to say that the current board, when we redid our building, was very enthusiastic about making it geothermal. We retrofitted all the lights in the building to be LED. We took, and when we built the new Public Works building, it was all built incredibly energy efficient. And we did all of that as part of their leadership. So I don't think they're against it in any way. And so, you know, I'll turn it over to Leonard to speak where he thinks the board is today. But I just would say that our board was very active in us going to LED streetlights. We're in the process of even finishing up. I mean, we did 100% of that. I think we found five LED lights that weren't done, and we're put that in the budget for 2021. We're talking about redoing all of the now we're getting into things like the flashers and the school zones and all of those things, which are much smaller. We did the streetlights first as the big piece. And like I said, we took this building, and it was when we did it, we did all the lights in the library, all the lights in the whole rest of the building were LED. And so it was a big undertaking. And we did geothermal to make it more energy efficient. So I do think the board has been supportive of that. Leonard, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think that what you just said there is basically a summary of what I was going to say. While I wasn't on the board at the time, the individuals who were on the board did all those things that Steve just mentioned there. In terms of the school district, again, an all Republican board, right? Let's not beat around the bush. That's what Harry's getting at, is that we're all Republicans, and the National Republican Party is one that, in terms of environmental stances, even though they created the EAP, have varied away from that in an unfortunate manner. But I think that just because the national politics, and in some instance the state politics, has turned into a disgrace in losing its core values. Perfect example is what just happened on Monday night, where while we passed what is referred to as a litter ordinance, one of the main emphasis of that litter ordinance is reducing the amount of plastic that's in the township, reducing the amount of paper that's circulating around in the township. So I don't think that just because Washington, D.C., and to an extent Harrisburg has individuals of the Republican Party who have strayed away from environmental principles doesn't mean that we here in Newtown Township as elected Republicans are following suit. It's the same thing with individuals of the Democratic Party who have difference of opinions from what their national leaders want and say. And I think that to hit one other thing, I think that this board, as someone who grew up in this township and who has been involved in the township for a long time, whether again, it was on the school board or on the planning commission. This board in particular has been extremely environmentally conscious. I think that, you know, we can find areas where that might not be true in terms of development and setbacks for riparian buffers and steep slope disturbance and things like that. But I think that the overall idea and goal to move forward in an environmentally conscious way, in a way that is sustainable for not just my generation, but the generation after me, is something that has been evidenced in the actions that the board has taken.
And can I just echo from, I totally agree with what both of you are saying. From Haverford's experience, Haverford is still a majority Republican Board of Commissioners. And 2018, it was a unanimous decision. They couldn't approve this fast enough. They actually, one of the Republican commissioners actually made a motion. The only motion was to send a copy of this letter to the White House to, you know, pretty much in kind of defiance of the federal inaction. Just last month, we're still a majority Republican. They unanimously approved a study to put solar on all the major buildings in Haverford, to really dig into the finances of that. Again, unanimous. So I totally agree with what, if it's similar where you guys, it's a different environment, I think. So that's been I was very surprised by both of those, but very strong support, irrespective of party. So.
Well, that's how I'm happy. I'm happy. I just wanted to hear that, and now I've heard it, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah. We were astonished. One thing that does help, if you guys are thinking of doing it, we had a lot of speakers, you know, school children, young people about their future. That's a winning strategy, to have people, you know, high school students, grade school students. There's plenty of them everywhere. Talk about their future. I think that's very hard for a local official to say no, as opposed to people in my age bracket. But anyway, that's just a FYI in terms of.
Hey, Steve, I was going to ask though, you know, I mean, we in 2017, I know it's been a couple years now when we made the move on this building. And you said there are some potentially some incentives. I would assume that we're too late to reach those incentives, having completed the building, or is that possible?
Yeah, it's too late. Anything that was done in the last 180 days, we can give an incentive for, or a project that will be done by May 15th. So, yeah, that's too far in the past.
Okay. But if we look at the possibility of going to something like and I don't know if this is included, like if you do hybrid cars, the township, is that included?
No, that's just that would just be cost savings for the police department.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve, I think you did a real nice job. We appreciate you being here.
You're quite welcome. And Janet, do you want me to send the slides, or does it matter? I think
No,
there's
we
some
want
link.
the slides. We want the slides.
All right, I'll send them on to Janet, and I will sign off. And it's been a real pleasure. And thank you for the invitation, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
So long. Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay, as I've indicated, we're not going to discuss any old business. We'll circle around to that later, but we do have 3 new business items. And what I'd like to do is defer conversation on the Earles Lake Dam. And Cindy, if you're in a position now to discuss your 2 items, the presentation and the Stormwater Task Force, we'd like you to do that. Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah.
Before you start, Cindy, could I just ask what we feel is the direction we're going to move forward on Ready for 100? Do we need a smaller part of the EAC to discuss this, to get back with Steve or to look at other resolutions that have been passed in our neighboring communities? How should we proceed rather than just, I don't want to leave it
Now, that's a good point, Janet.
Point. Let me propose that we deal with that in email, maybe even go as far as getting some bullets points as to what would appear in this resolution.
okay?
And we're floated in front of Steve and Leonard and get a reaction. Is that okay, Steve and Leonard?
I'm fine with that. That
Okay.
sounds
Is
good.
it possible we could also look at Radnor and some of the other surrounding to see if they modified some of the language to make sure it was something that we would be comfortable with as well? Because it's great to put the initiative out there, but I want to make sure that we have both the support of the township manager and the supervisors to make sure that this is a document that we're just not going through the motions, but we're really going to follow through with.
Yep.
I will make available at least 3 resolutions that are from our nearby neighbors.
Great.
That we can look at.
Okay, well, I would like to formalize this by making a motion that the EAC would move to draft a resolution to support Ready for 100 and present it to the Board of Supervisors. Would that be an appropriate motion to make?
It's okay from my standpoint.
Fine for me.
Okay.
That's
not-
me and a yes from Janet.
Right. Oh, did everybody vote?
This is Jason. Sorry, I was on double mute. Yeah, I'm good with that. Are we going to meet outside of the monthly meeting or to maybe go over it? I'd like to maybe have a discussion on it with the smaller EAC committee.
Sounds good.
Yes, I would like to explore this further as well.
Steve, we're kind of time challenged. When's our drop dead or end of meeting deadline here?
Say that, I apologize, you broke up.
I said we've got a lot to pack in the next few minutes. When is our deadline to finish this meeting?
Well, I would appreciate if you were done by no later than about 1/4 or so, because I have to get the meeting set up for the municipal authority.
Sure, we shouldn't last that long, so it's good to know. Thanks. Cindy.
Sure. Okay, well, I will go quickly on agenda item 7.2, and that just to say that I was recently approached by the CRC, who was looking for speakers for their annual environmental awards dinner, gala, whatever, which we actually won that award a couple years ago. For October 22nd, and they wanted me to talk about our rain gardens. And I said, well, our rain gardens haven't happened yet, but what if we talked, I was trying to help them with some ideas. I said, what if we talked about some of the tree plantings that have taken place in the township in the last several years, and how they have fared and how they are contributing to stormwater management, climate change, and things like that 5 years in. And they liked the idea. So I am now putting together a presentation and will speak for about 20 minutes at the virtual CRC annual meeting, which is going to be on Thursday, October 22nd from 6 to 8 p.m.
Cindy, you should tell us who CRC is.
Oh, Crum Creek, Ridley, Chester Watershed Association. The CRC is a nonprofit watershed education and advocacy group. Their office is in Okahocking Park, and they cover the watershed that is the western half of Newtown Square. Newtown Square lies in 2 watersheds, Crum Creek on the western half, roughly west of Route 252, and roughly the eastern portion of Newtown Square is in the Darby Creek watershed. And there is a corresponding watershed group called Darby Creek Valley Association, which advocates and educates and cares for the Darby Creek watershed. Thanks for pointing that out, Bruce. So the two tree plantings that I'll be talking about are both on Crum Creek. First, it's the tree planting that the township did with Aqua a couple years ago around the Little League fields on the steep embankment around that, where they planted roughly 60 or 70 trees and shrubs, and using volunteers or employees. And since George has, Sherritt's Public Works Director has converted the, what I think, and I'm going to confirm, used to be mowed grass to a low mow area, which is a stormwater management best practice. So kind of revisit that 4 or 5 years in, what happened, how's it doing? And a similar approach to what's going on at Garrett Williamson, where they've done tree plantings along the stream that flows under their entrance road and then down along Bishop Hollow Road. And I've reached out to both George Sherritt's and Justin Power, who is the facilities coordinator for Garrett Williamson. So just wanted to let you all know that that was in the works.
Just real quick, Cindy, I would tell you that the grass that you're talking about went from regular mowing to, I'm not sure we mow it at all now, but I know we rarely mow it if we do.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I'm going to be getting the details from George. I suspect that he's following the best practice of just mowing twice a year, because you need to cut down the woody growth. Otherwise, it'll revert to being a forest.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's great. And hopefully more people will consider a low mow approach. So unless we have any questions on that, I'll move on to item number 3 or 7.3. And this,
One question, Cindy, are CRC interested in presenting to us sometime?
I'm sure they would be. Yes. Yep. I'm sure they would be.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a volunteer event there at work for the CRC.
Beg your pardon?
We have a volunteer event there in 2 weeks. I didn't know if that was related, but.
Oh, neat. No, could be, but not that I'm aware of. The next item is something that's worthy of probably more than discussion than we can give it here now. But I just wanted to let you know that the topic of a Citizens Advisory Task Force, Stormwater Task Force, has surfaced recently. The role of the EAC and volunteers in supplementing the township's municipal stormwater management efforts and accomplishment of the pollution reduction plan is something that the DEP envisions citizen and community involvement, and it's something that we've offered to do. And recently, a very specific, tangible example of that has really surfaced, and that is the Tredyffrin Township has a Tredyffrin Citizens Advisory Stormwater Task Force. And I recently shared information about that with Leonard and Steve, and I'm going to turn this over to him in a minute so he can weigh in on it. But basically, they have a very robust, active citizens task force, which has many resident members, 3 of whom are EAC members. And their general role is to be the public liaison, the interface with citizens who have complaints, who want to make the township aware of stormwater hotspots throughout the township. And what triggered this is the recent survey that the Newtown engineer sent out. And after the meeting, I can circulate a link, and I would encourage you to set aside some time to look at the very deep professional web content that this resident task force does in terms of intaking comments, categorizing them, prioritizing them, plotting them on an up-to-date interactive GIS map, which can be sorted all different ways, and gathering that information, which then they can hand over to the township and the engineer to inform the financial and engineering decisions. So I'll leave it there and let Steve and Leonard weigh in with their thoughts and insights.
We had allowed to have questions, Cindy.
Yeah.
It seems like stormwater comes up at every supervisor meeting, and a lot of the remedy is somewhat short term, or not short term, but has to be acted on quickly. Do you think this advisory committee would help to make the process more efficient so there's advance notice to the township about problem areas?
Yeah, I think definitely it would, because, you know, stormwater response is infrastructure based, and infrastructure is pretty permanent and pretty expensive.
Mhm.
And, you know, when given the timeframes that are required by going through the regulatory process of the MS4 plan, I mean, heck, I think the township started their plan 2 years ago, and it's still not approved yet. But yeah, I think definitely having a more current, comprehensive data set of where the you know, stormwater issues are would definitely, I think, inform better decisions and spending of the significant money that's going to be involved.
I guess the other question I have is, let's say I'm a citizen and I've got a water problem in my front yard. Do I come to you or to this group, or do I come to the township first?
My understanding is that you would go to, that there's like an intake mechanism.
Okay.
Online, it's very streamlined, and you submit it and you document it. You can send photos. It's a very organized, methodical approach for capturing the information.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
I would just state that it actually fits very well with what we've been talking about through the strategic plan, and part of the goals is related to what we're trying to accomplish in the area of stormwater. And as I shared with you, Bruce, you know, we tackled specifically these two neighborhoods related to the last storm we had, and the board chose to move forward. I think the board would be thrilled to have citizen involvement in the process. You know, one thing I can tell you, the board is more and more, you know, I've seen that, and just hoping that, you know, the citizens would be involved, and we're looking for every opportunity to do that. So I don't see that being an issue with the board to move forward with something like that. I'll let Leonard speak to that a little bit more here in just a second, but I would just say that that concept is very similar to what we had talked about in the strategic plan as it related to stormwater, and felt that there needed to be citizen action. And actually, I think going back to something that Cindy brought up, there was, you know, even the talk about trying to tackle this neighborhood by neighborhood versus just a specific small area, but really looking at the whole. And that was the reason why the survey was done by the engineer. We actually, I think, sent out 500 surveys or something like that, trying to best understand the area that we were looking at. Leonard.
Yeah, I mean, without belaboring the point, based off of what Cindy said and what Steve said, one of the supervisors in Neartern is a guy by the name of Mark Freed. He's also an attorney, but I know him through a philanthropic organization the two of us are involved in. So I did send him an email, And I was scanning my emails now. I did not see a response back from him. So I will make sure I can follow up. I don't know him personally. I know him, a friend who's in, I guess, that chapter, if you will call it, knows him more than I do. But we had a case against him that I was second chair on. So he still wouldn't know who I am. But anyway, regardless of that, the one other point I just want to hammer home with what Steve just said there is having the that citizen advisory council is exactly what we want. I mean, we are constantly trying to get more and more people to get involved, and it's so much easier for us to have another working group whose sole focus is just that one issue to come up with a holistic approach on this as opposed to just doing it piecemeal. It makes sense from just a accountability perspective. It makes sense from a flow perspective. So it is something that I don't think that there's going to be any issue with us moving forward on. The only thing is, you know, and thankfully it's been changing, but usually it's a hard time getting individuals to apply for a board or commission. But as was evident with the Shade Tree Commission, there was a good amount of extremely qualified individuals who applied for that. So I don't think we're going to have any issues.
That's great. Very encouraging. And I did put the URL in the chat panel if you want to click on that. It's pretty easy to find, and I'd encourage you to dive in and make sure you look at the map. But that's great, Steve and Leonard. Glad to hear that.
Let me propose this as a next step. Cindy and anybody else, if we could put together a kind of bullet point presentation or proposal on the structure of a stormwater task force and share that again with Leonard and Steve to get some feedback. And if corrections have to be made or it has to be filled out, we can do that as well. So.
Yeah, I'm willing to do that. Is that what Steve and Leonard see as the next step?
You know, here's what I would say. I think if we gave that, if you gave a general piece like that to the board, I think it would help as we start moving forward. Leonard, I'll let you answer if you feel something different. But.
No, I agree with that. The only advice I would give to both Bruce and Cindy is don't reinvent the wheel, right? So if Tredyffrin has the information, just to a control find, take out Tredyffrin and add in Newtown Township. Keep it easy, because as Cindy said, that link that she provided, it is an extremely, they do a good job on how it's set up. The dashboard is good. I talked to Kathy Spar already. She has the capability of doing something like that. She's actually done it, I believe, or it'll be coming live for the leaf collection, right, Steve? Didn't she do a dashboard for the leaf collection? So that capability is something that we have in-house already. So a teacher once told me, work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah.
And then he added another line in there that I'm not going to repeat on a recorded thing on what to do if you think if you're failing the test.
Okay. Well, thanks for the guidance.
Do we have any comments from the group or the public at this point?
I think it sounds like a great idea. Again, any more involvement we can get from the community, it just pulls us together.
Yep.
Are we not going, Steve, are we not going to hear anything about Earles Lake?
Well, I skipped over that, and we can circle back. I skipped it over that in the interest of time. But
well, if we have a few minutes, I'd like to hear what's going on from Steve Neese.
Mm-hmm.
So what I can tell you is this, that the board directed us to reach out to DEP and to Radnor, and as well as to the homeowners association there who was doing the project, and we did. Just so everybody's aware, this is a DEP order for the dam to be partially breached. It's not something that we would stop. We did look at whether or not that we felt like everything was done properly, at least to the point to make sure that people downstream as well as the people within the community would not be left with just a total mess. I will tell you, we've talked with DEP. I've met with them at least 3 times related to this since then. And what I can tell you is they have shared with us that the base of the pond that is being drained, probably for the first 6 months, only because it's being drained now, will have at least some exposure that won't be fully covered. On the side, I believe if I'm using my geography right, I think it's the east side of the pond. It may be the north side of the pond, depending on how you look at north and south at that location. There will be some of the debris from the dam that will be put there and covered, and it will be brought to a level of, as part of the project, it has to be stabilized and made sure that that'll be done. And then the idea is that the stream that runs through there will create its own channel, basically, through the pond base, and it will eventually just keep running right on down. So there will be, and I'll just tell you, DEP has said this, there will be a fair amount of sediment that will go downstream during the dam breach. There is nothing that they can do to keep that from happening. They are going to be watching it. We have required a demolition permit, and we've also required a soil erosion permit from the township. And then, so we will be watching the project. We will be out there. Radnor has said that they also are going to send someone out there to watch the process, because they too want to make sure that it's done in such a way that it protects downstream. Because if you're not familiar, basically on the other side of the dam, once the dam is breached, any water that goes down goes to Radnor Township residents as an impact. And so, and that's the reason why it is being partially breached at this time, is because DEP believes that to continue to allow the dam to be there is a danger to the community downstream.
And the other thing too, just to add that in there, is that the dam is owned 100% by the Earles Lake, the Green Country Homeowners Association. So the township has no ownership interest in that dam and has no legal standing in that dam, other than making sure that DEP, follows the ordinances that we've set out there. We're asking them to get the demolition permit, and we're asking them to get what's the other one, Steve? Demolition permit.
Soil and erosion.
Soil and erosion permit. I've been in constant contact with Lisa Borowski, who's the Radnor commissioner for the 5th Ward, which butts up to Newtown Township. She has told me numerous times, it is not the position of Radnor Township that they want to stop this, because they are legitimately scared that that dam is going to break and those houses downstream are going to get washed out. Now, I saw the same article that I'm sure a lot of you have seen, that I think was written by Vista today. And there were 2 residents that were, upset that the dam is being breached. Unfortunately, or fortunately for them, they're at the higher part of that. So if that dam did breach, their house is not any immediate danger of getting washed out. She told me when that tropical storm came that she woke up at 3:30 in the morning and couldn't fall back asleep because they were worried that that dam was going to break. That's how bad it's gotten. The Homeowners Association, unfortunately, has allowed it to go into disrepair. And instead of maintaining it, they just kept putting piecemeal band-aids on it, if you will. And so now it's the situation that we're in.
In terms of particulate flowing down into Darby Creek, is dredging an option at all to help to mitigate that potential?
I think the particulate that they're concerned about is that when they breach the dam, so the dam itself is got some concrete, but it also obviously has some dirt around it. And what they're saying is there's just no way to breach that dam and not have some particulate go down during that. I mean, it's just, this is DEP coming back and saying this. You know, these are the guys that do this all the time.
Right.
And they're just saying to expect there not to be some particulate going down would not even be reasonable. I mean, obviously they're going to do everything they can. So the first step is they're going to pump around massive amounts of that water, and until it gets drained, they won't even start taking the dam down. And I've been assured that if we look at, we're going to have a storm, like one of the hurricanes come up through this area, which typically by the time they get here, it's a tropical depression or less, but a storm like that coming through. If that's coming through, they will halt the process of taking the dam out, or they will speed up the process to be done before it gets here. And so it just kind of depends on where they are in the process, but they're going to start. It's going to take, as I understand it, a little while to pump the lake down. And once they get that done, then they will do the breach. And it's, like I said, it's a partial breach. They're not breaking the whole thing. So all of the silt and all of that that's settled in the base is not going to be going downstream because it's going to still be held back by the part of the dam that's there. It's the water that they're getting rid of.
One other thing I just want to say, because I know this has been a rumor that's been going around for years, I would say probably 4 years, and it's starting to get resurfaced now that DEP is inside the lake and are taking out the turtles. I think the red bottom turtles, because they're an endangered species, they're if you drive by, sometimes you'll see them on the rafts going down there and grabbing them. There's a rumor that the Board of Supervisors is looking at this to build additional condominiums. And I will say this on a recorded line, and I will say this with my hand on the Bible, that is one of the most moronic rumors I've heard. And I've heard a lot of moronic rumors. And I'm happy that, you know, Harry brought up the concerns that he has about us being Republican and whether we're environmentally friendly, but I can assure you that this board is not going to do anything like that. It would be considered a wetland. And it's just, unfortunately, it's a fear tactic, and we're in the middle of an election, so we know there's a lot of that going around. And it's not something that's going to happen. I can tell you that with all certainty, that that's not something that would be approved.
Okay, Steve, I'm very conscious of your time here.
Thank you.
Unless someone has a comment, we're going to break or adjourn this meeting. Final chance. Okay.
I just want to say thank you to everyone.
I just want to say this last thing. The Shade Tree Commission is meeting for their first meeting on Wednesday night. Real quick, the 5 individuals are Trish Adams, who's here. She's with the Department of Interior in the Fish and Wildlife Department. So she's a marine biologist. We have Rob Vanicola, who is a small business owner. He's also a registered arborist. We have Carol Wagner, who is, and when I say Rob's a small business owner, he's got a landscaping company. Carol Wagner is a horticulturalist and in charge of the grounds at Haverford College. Tom Tomasco is a landscaper. He's owned a landscape company for the last 35 or 40 years. And then John Rice is an individual from who just moved into the township. He lives in Lister, and he was on the Shade Tree Commission in Lower Merion, and is the volunteer grounds chair for an estate that I'm drawing a blank on in Montgomery County that apparently is like 20 acres. And from what I hear, it's absolutely beautiful. So long short of it is, I last time I talked about it, I told you I didn't want to say anyone's name because we didn't vote on it. Those are the 5 individuals. Wednesday, 6:30 is our meeting. I will be there for the first half hour, but it is, it's a very exciting time, and that committee is a very solid committee. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Is it open?
Leonard, Cindy and I did meet with, got some information about, you know, the tree inventory. Should we wait till their second meeting to kind of speak with them and bring them up to speed with the information we gathered on that?
Yeah, because the first meeting, it's going to be them reorganizing. I don't know if we're going to be setting a schedule for when they start meeting, Steve, but they are going to have other tasks. I do know, full disclosure to everyone here, since you were the committee that wrote the shade tree ordinance, 2 of the people who, when we interviewed, who were subsequently selected, had recommendations to improve that ordinance. So I do want everybody to know that I told them that living document, that is a living document, and it's not something that's set in wood. it can be moved, and we can make it better. That's a bad attempt at an environmental joke. I'm sorry. It's going to be a project that ordinance will continue to get beefed up, and just both of them brought up the diameter of trees that need to be replanted. It was actually the horticulturalist and the arborist thought that having I think it's 3-inch diameter to be replanted is too big, and that they wouldn't survive, and they want them to start off with a smaller tree. So they are going to be working through some of that stuff, the ironing it out to make it better, in addition to some other things, Sheila. So I would hit them full speed at the second meeting. Let them think it's nice, easy.
Yeah, basically this first meeting, we're going to make sure they understand their duties and also go over the permitting process so that we make sure that we have a good piece of a direction, and then we can start doing the other pieces.
I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
All right.
Here we go. Everybody.
Again, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.